What's up everyone, Mark here and welcome back to the channel. Today on the Project Lab, we're going to be building a DIY pet window in the fence between mine and my neighbor's yard so our bulldog Twinkle can socialize with her friend Luke the lab next door. Now first of all, it's important to point out that this is something my neighbor and I have already discussed and agreed upon, especially since the section of fence between our two yards belongs to her. Whether you want to install a window like this so your dog can be with a friend, or just so that they can survey their kingdom outside of their own yard, the process remains pretty much the same. So you may be asking yourself, why? Why build my own pet window like this when there are a ton of pre-made versions out there? Well, there are a few problems with those options, so let's talk about them. First, most pet windows available online or in big box stores are nothing more than a plastic or acrylic bubble that screws over a hole in the fence. Unless you cut that hole perfectly, the edges are going to look janky, and there's no good or easy way to trim around the inside or outside of a round bubble. Second, these ready-made windows work great in a fence made of solid material like wood, but other common fence materials like vinyl can be a challenge. Vinyl fencing is made up of hollow plastic pickets joined with a tongue and groove system that are held in place by bottom and top rails. Cutting through a fence like this not only makes the ugly insides of the hollow pickets visible, but it also hurts the structural integrity of the fence panel and exposes the hollow areas to the possibility of filling with rain, snow, leaves, and dirt. Lastly, plastic windows are prone to getting scuffed and scratched, and in time will almost definitely fog over like old car headlights, making it impossible for your pup to even see through. The window I designed for my fence, two of them actually, solve all of these problems. Construction is simple, using readily available materials and requiring no special tools or skills. There aren't a lot of complicated measurements to take or parts to cut, and the entire build can be easily completed in a single afternoon. The design uses a hardware cloth or wire screen instead of plastic or glass, giving the window a more open feel, and the way it's constructed and installed helps reinforce the weaknesses introduced by cutting the hole in the first place. Best of all, the window is simple to install, even working from just one side of the fence. If you're interested in replicating this build for yourself, I've included a link down in the description to a PDF of the drawings and measurements with instructions to accompany this video. Just note that the design is intended for vinyl fencing with 6-inch wide pickets of 1-inch thickness, which is more or less a de facto industry standard anyway. And remember that when you take on a project like this, it's at your own risk, so always err on the side of safety if you're uncomfortable with any part of it. Before we dive into the project, I'd just like to take a second to ask you to consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. If you enjoy this kind of video, I have new content of all kinds coming out all the time, including more projects just like this one. So when you subscribe, make sure you tap the bell to turn on notifications so you don't miss the next video. Okay, first, let's talk materials. For each window, you'll need 2 lengths of 3/4 inch by 3.5 inch vinyl trim board. 2 6-foot lengths would be sufficient if you can find them, but you may only be able to find 8-foot lengths, which is fine. You'll just have a bit of extra. Save your scrap pieces, they're great for small projects in the future. You'll also need 2 1-inch square by 36-inch long hardwood dowels, a few number 8 2-inch deck screws, number 8 1.5-inch stainless steel screws, and a 12 by 18-inch piece of 1/2-inch galvanized wire hardware cloth to use for the actual window. Hardware cloth like this is typically sold in rolls of 2 to 3 feet by however long, but you may also find places that sell it in smaller pieces or by length. For my build, I also took the extra step of painting the hardwood dowels ahead of time. Being that they're the only actual wood components of the window, I wanted to help make sure that they're protected from the weather. I also didn't want the color of the wood to throw off the look, since the rest of the material of the window and fence is white vinyl. Fortunately, I had some black spray paint left over from another project anyway, so I just gave the dowels a few coats the day before. As far as tools, there are a few basic things you'll need, but of course the more and better tools you have, the easier time you'll have with the build. First, you'll need a saw. Ideally, this should be a miter saw to help make sure all of your cuts are square. You could certainly get by using a regular hand saw, but you'll just need to work extra carefully to keep things straight. Second, you'll need a power drill, along with bits for the screws, as well as an 1/8-inch and 1/2-inch drill bits. If you have more than one drill, setting one up with the drill bit and another with the screw bit can help make things go much more quickly. Next, you'll need a reciprocating saw. If you don't have one, you could certainly get away with using a keyhole saw, which is just a small, narrow handheld saw intended for drywall and for getting into tight spaces. You'll also need a staple gun to attach to the screen, as well as a few other items including a tape measure, ruler, and pencil. If you have a speed square, this can be helpful as well for marking perpendicular cut lines. Lastly, and perhaps most importantly, don't forget about safety glasses and hearing protection. Getting started, the first step was to cut the dowels into the needed lengths for the window jamb, 2 18 inches long and 2 9 3/4 inches long. It's important for these cuts to be square so that the jamb fits together nice and tight. Next, we're assembling the Jamb using 2-inch deck screws, pre-drilling with the 1/8-inch bit. Notice that the screws go through the top and bottom edge of each side piece into the ends of the top and bottom pieces. We're extra careful when drilling here to make sure that we're placing the holes as close to centered on the ends of the top and bottom pieces as possible. The Jamb is relatively thin at only 1 inch square, so we need to be careful to avoid splitting the wood. With the Jamb assembled, we're just going to position the screen so it's centered over the frame and staple it securely in place. And yeah, I'm not the neatest stapler, but a staple hammer is a little less precise than our normal staple gun, so cut me some slack. Now it's time to cut the PVC trim board for both sides of the window casing. Again, this is relatively straightforward, all square cuts of just 2 uniform lengths, 4 pieces which are 16 inches long, and 4 pieces which are 16 3/4 inches long. Once we have the first piece cut for each length, we can simply use that as the template for the rest, always making sure to just cut away the pencil line, resulting in nice uniform pieces. Once all the pieces of casing are cut and checked, it's time to measure and mark for the screws where they'll attach to the Jamb. It's not any intense math or anything, and I'll get to why this is important in a second. First, we mark the back side of each piece to identify it as the top, bottom, left, or right of each side in order to keep track. The longer pieces are the tops and bottoms, and the shorter pieces are the sides. All of the holes will be 1/2 inch in from the interior edge of the casing. However, spacing from the ends varies for side 1 versus side 2, and the reason that's important is in order to avoid screws running into each other inside the structural wooden Jamb. With a total of 20 screws inside the Jamb, each had to be carefully placed by design in order to keep enough distance to prevent splitting of the wood. For side 1, the holes are 3 inches from the ends for the sides and 6 inches from the ends for the top and bottom. By contrast, for side 2, holes are 2 inches from the ends for the sides and 5 inches from the ends for the top and bottom. With all of the holes marked, it was time to drill, keeping the drill as perpendicular as possible to prevent the screws from ending up at an angle. Drilling all of these holes now helps each piece act as a sort of template when it comes time to drill the Jamb later. Working first on the side of the Jamb with the screen attached, side 2, which will be the outside or neighbor side of the window, each piece of casing needs to be placed, drilled, and screwed. It's most important to get the first piece lined up since it will determine the fit of all the others. With the top piece of casing centered using another piece of casing to line it up, and with the edge flush with the Jamb is drilled using the already drilled casing as a template. Next, the piece is screwed into the Jamb using 1.5 inch stainless steel screws. I chose stainless steel for this because I think it looks a little nicer, and they won't stain and leave streaks on the PVC over time. After the first piece is on, we can continue with the sides, and finally the bottom, checking with each piece to make sure that everything is still lined up just right. Attaching the casing is the same for the other side, which will be the inside or your side of the window. This time though, the pieces will need to be removed for installation, so I'm not driving the screws all the way in, though same as before, all of the holes are pre-drilled. Now it was finally time to cut the hole in the fence, which can be a little scary. First, we measure up 2 1/4 inches from the bottom rail of the fence and mark a line spanning 2 pickets. This will be the bottom cut. Next, we measure up 18.5 inches from there and mark another line, which will be the top cut. This allows a generous margin of 1/2 inch or 1/4 inch each at the top and bottom for expansion and contraction movement of the vinyl pickets. When we're ready to cut the hole, we use a 1/2 inch bit to drill 4 holes, one at each end of both cut lines and as close to the joint between the 2 pickets as possible while remaining fully inside the pickets which we're cutting away. Then, using a reciprocating saw, we easily connect the dots between each set of holes, effectively cutting loose a chunk of 2 adjacent pickets. There will inevitably be a bit of plastic at the edge where the cut pieces are still attached, so it may take a little flexing or even additional cutting to break them free. By the way, if you notice the wire grates blocking the bottom of the fence to help with digging, I've got a video about that too. Depending on when you're seeing this, if that video is out, a card will be popping up for it right about now in the upper right corner. Anyway, once the pieces are removed and the hole is opened up, you'll notice that there are weird stubby pieces of each picket left at the bottom, and that's by design. Remember, I said that it's easy to ruin the structural integrity of one of these fences, and the whole panel sort of works like a system to hold itself together structurally. By keeping this little bit here, it acts as a contiguous piece of fence, locking the bottom rail of the window into the bottom rail of the fence and helping to hold everything together. After the casing for side 1 is removed, the window can be passed through the opening and positioned with the casing facing the outside or neighbor. Then with just a little bit of flexing, and if everything was measured correctly, the window should make a nice friction fit into the rough opening. If needed, and provided you have access, you can always press the window into place from the opposite side of the fence. With the window in place, it's then just a matter of reattaching the interior casing pieces, starting with the bottom, then sides, then top, making sure that all the screws are driven fully this time. And we're done. Talking cost, the 2 PVC trim boards were about $23 a piece. The 2 hardwood square dowels cost about $6 each, and a package of stainless steel screws was also about $6. Since I already had the deck screws, hardware cloth, spray paint for the Jamb, and cute 2-inch vinyl lettering, all in, this project cost me just about $65 per window, which I believe is a great price considering it's what I think is a quality build and a well-engineered solution to the problem. And best of all, there's the satisfaction of having done it myself. Now Twinkle has a fun and easy way to interact with her friend next door, and everybody is happy, including Joe and myself, our neighbor Sandy, and most importantly, Twinkle and Luke. Thank you all so much for staying with it until the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it, learned something, or were inspired to take on a project like this yourself. I'd really appreciate it if you'd take a second to give the video a thumbs up if you liked it, or a thumbs down if you didn't. And it would really mean a lot if you'd consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.